What if a forest had a memory, a dark one, of people it simply refuses to let go of? In a small forgotten corner of Vermont, between 1945 and 1950, 5 people took a walk in the woods around Glastonbury Mountain and never walked out. They vanished from familiar trails, from their own backyards, and even from inside a moving bus. They left behind no bodies, no clues, and one of America's most chilling and unsolved mysteries, the Bennington Triangle. Before it got its ominous modern name, the area of southwestern Vermont around Glastonbury Mountain already had a dark reputation. The name Bennington Triangle didn't come about until 1992, coined by New England author Joseph A. Citro, who saw the disturbing pattern in the disappearances and linked it to the region's strange history. Long before the 1940s, this was Abenaki tribe land, and they mostly avoided the mountain. They considered it a cursed place, using it only for burials. Their legends spoke of the summit as the place where the 4 winds met in an eternal, violent struggle. A story that seems to have a real-world basis, as the mountain is known for its wild and treacherous wind patterns that can disorient anyone. Ancient legends also told of a man-eating stone on the peak, a rock that could supposedly swallow a person whole. In the 1800s, the area was a hub of industry. Logging towns like Glastonbury and Somerset popped up, full of workers clear-cutting the forests, but it didn't last. By the late 19th century, the industry declined and the towns withered. By 1937, the state of Vermont officially unincorporated them. They became ghost towns, their foundations slowly swallowed by the same woods that had once promised so much. It was against this backdrop of old curses and modern decay that the forest began to take people. Some say it had been taking them for years, but between 1945 and 1950, the disappearances became too frequent and too bizarre to ignore. The string of disappearances that would define the Bennington Triangle began on November 12th, 1945. The first to be claimed by the mountain was Middy Rivers, a 74-year-old man who was anything but a novice. He was an experienced hunter and fishing guide who knew the woods around Glastonbury like the back of his hand. On that day, Rivers was leading a small hunting party. He got a little bit ahead of the others, which wasn't unusual for a guide leading the way. His companions saw him walk around a bend in the trail. When they followed just moments later, expecting to see him on the path ahead, he was gone. Middy Rivers had completely vanished. At first, no one was too worried. With his skills, they figured he'd show up. But when he didn't return to camp, the alarm was raised. A massive search was launched with over 300 locals and even US Army soldiers. They scoured the area, but the forest gave up nothing. The only thing ever found was a single rifle cartridge from his gun discovered in a stream bed. The theory is he might have bent over for a drink and it just fell out of his pocket. But of Middy Rivers himself, his body, his clothes, his rifle, there was no trace. He had walked into the woods he knew so well and was never seen again. Just over a year later, the mystery deepened with what would become the most infamous case of the Bennington Triangle. On December 1st, 1946, Paula Jean Weldon, an 18-year-old sophomore at Bennington College, decided to go for a hike. She was a typical college student working a shift in the dining hall before changing into her walking clothes. She was last seen wearing a very noticeable red parka. She clearly didn't plan on being gone long. She took no bag, no extra money, and wasn't prepared for a long journey. Weldon hitched a ride to an entrance of Vermont's famous Long Trail near Glastonbury Mountain. Several people saw her that afternoon. An elderly couple later said they were walking about 100 yards behind her. They watched as she rounded a rocky outcropping on the trail, but when they reached the same spot moments later, she was gone. Her bright red jacket should have been easy to spot against the grey, early winter landscape, but there was just nothing. When Paula didn't return to her dorm, her roommate thought she was just studying late. It wasn't until the next morning that she was reported missing. What followed was a massive frantic search. The FBI was even called in to assist. At the time, Vermont had no state police force, and her father was publicly critical of the investigation. The high-profile and puzzling nature of Paula's case directly persuaded legislators to create the Vermont State Police the very next year. Weeks of searching turned up nothing, not a single clue to explain what happened. Paula Weldon had walked around a corner and simply ceased to exist. For 3 years, the forest was quiet. Then, on December 1st, 1949, exactly 3 years to the day that Paula Weldon disappeared, the Triangle claimed its next victim in what might be the most baffling disappearance of them all. James Tedford was a 68-year-old World War I veteran living at the Bennington Soldiers' Home. He'd been in St Albans, Vermont, visiting family. That afternoon, they saw him off at the bus station. 14 other passengers on that bus later confirmed that Tedford was on board. They saw him in his seat, dozing, as the bus made its way south, travelling right through the heart of what we now call the Bennington Triangle. When the bus pulled into its final stop in Bennington, James Tedford was gone. The other passengers were stunned. They all remembered seeing him, but no one saw him get off. His luggage was still on the rack above his seat. An open bus timetable was lying on the empty seat itself, but the man had vanished from a moving vehicle, surrounded by witnesses, without anyone noticing a thing. The stories get even stranger from here. We're about to talk about the disappearance of an 8-year-old boy and the only case where a body was actually found, though it only made things more mysterious. If you find these unexplained events as fascinating as I do, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. We dive into mysteries like this every week, and your support helps us keep the search for answers going. The fear that had been slowly building in the area ramped up in the fall of 1950. On October 12th, the Triangle took its youngest victim. 8-year-old Paul Jepson lived with his family, and his mother was working as a caretaker at the town dump. That afternoon, she left Paul happily playing in their pickup truck while she tended to some pigs. She was gone for about an hour. When she came back, the truck was empty. Paul was gone. A frantic search started immediately. Paul was wearing a bright red jacket, which everyone hoped would make him easy to spot, but he was nowhere. A bloodhound was brought in and picked up the boy's scent. The dog followed the trail from the truck to a nearby crossroads, where the scent just ended. This suggested to some that Paul might have been picked up by a car. Adding a profoundly strange layer to the case, Paul's father told investigators that for days before he vanished, the boy had been talking about the mountains, as if something was calling to him. Had he wandered off toward Glastonbury Mountain, drawn by some strange lure, or did the trail go cold because he simply vanished, just like the others? Hundreds of people searched, but no trace of the little boy was ever found. Just 16 days after Paul Jepson disappeared, on October 28, 1950, the Bennington Triangle saw its fifth and final bizarre event. Frida Langer, a 53-year-old from Massachusetts, was camping with her husband and cousin near the Somerset Reservoir. She was an experienced hiker and knew the area well. That afternoon, she and her cousin were on a short hike when Frida slipped while crossing a stream and soaked her clothes. Annoyed but unhurt, she told her cousin she was going to walk the short half-mile back to their camp to change. He waited for her and waited. Frida Langer never came back. Another massive search was launched with hundreds of people, planes and helicopters, but they found nothing. This time, however, there's a twist. 7 months later, on May 12, 1951, Frida's body was found, but the discovery only deepened the mystery. Her remains were located near the reservoir in an area that had been thoroughly and repeatedly searched the previous fall. How could hundreds of searchers have missed a body in a place they'd already cleared? Her remains were too decomposed to determine a cause of death. It felt like one final, taunting riddle from the forest. So, what happened in the Bennington Triangle? The theories range from the grimly logical to the truly bizarre. The most straightforward explanation is that it's all just a tragic coincidence, amplified by local folklore. The wilderness around Glastonbury Mountain is rugged and the weather is notoriously unpredictable. It's entirely possible that Rivers, Weldon and Langer simply got lost and succumbed to the elements, their remains hidden by the dense terrain. A more sinister theory suggests a serial killer was at work. Some point to a local lumberjack who gave conflicting statements about Paula Weldon's case and even told people he knew where she was buried, though he later took it back. However, the victims don't fit a typical pattern. They vary widely in age and gender, and with no physical evidence, the theory is impossible to prove. Then you get the paranormal theories, fueled by the region's strange history. Some point to the Native American legends of a cursed mountain or a man-eating stone. Others wonder about an interdimensional portal or a vortex in the woods where people could accidentally slip through. Believers in this idea point to how some of the victims seem to vanish in the blink of an eye. There are also old local tales of a Bigfoot-like creature, and of course, where there are unexplained disappearances, UFO abduction theories are never far behind. After Frida Langer's body was found in 1951, the strange disappearances just stopped. The Bennington Triangle fell silent. Today, the mystery is as deep and dense as the Vermont forest itself. We're left with 5 stories, 5 lives that ended in a question mark. Were they victims of a harsh wilderness, the prey of a silent, clever killer, or did they stumble into something else, something ancient and strange that waits in the deep woods of Glastonbury Mountain? The forest keeps its secrets, and the Bennington Triangle has never given up its dead. What do you think happened to these 5 people? Share your theories in the comments below, and if you enjoy exploring the world's greatest unsolved mysteries, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.